Beloved soul, right now, this very moment, someone is fighting a battle inside their own mind that you cannot see. They are standing at the crossroads between what they want and what they fear, between the pull toward you and the voice inside their head screaming at them to run. And if these words are reaching you tonight, if something inside you already senses this truth, then part of you has already felt this invisible struggle happening in them. Type in the comments right now, I sense they're in a battle. This is not just words you're typing. This is your spiritual declaration that you recognize what's happening beneath the surface, that you understand this person is fighting themselves more than they're fighting you. Because here is the truth that most people never understand. Sometimes the distance between two people has nothing to do with love disappearing. Sometimes distance is someone fighting their own mind, their own fear, their own trauma responses. They're not running from you. They're running from what you make them feel. They're not pulling away because you're not enough. They're pulling away because you're too much, too real, too deep, too capable of breaking through their carefully constructed walls. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening inside their mind right now. They wake up thinking about you. The first thought of the day is your face, your voice, the way you make them feel. And immediately, panic sets in. Their mind starts the war. This is too much. This is dangerous. You're getting too attached. You need to pull back. You need to protect yourself. Remember the last time you trusted someone? Remember how that ended? Every positive thought about you is immediately followed by a negative one, a fear, a reason why this cannot work. They try to distract themselves. They throw themselves into work, into hobbies, into conversations with other people. They desperately try to fill the space you occupy in their mind with anything else. But you keep appearing. You keep interrupting their carefully planned day. And each time you appear in their thoughts, the battle intensifies. Because part of them, the part that's healed, the part that's grown, wants to move closer to you, wants to reach out, wants to finally be vulnerable. But another part, the part that's been hurt before, the part that learned vulnerability leads to pain, keeps slamming the door shut, keeps telling them it's not safe, keeps reminding them of every way you could hurt them, keeps screaming that loving you means risking everything. If you've felt this push and pull from someone, if you've experienced their hot and cold behavior, if you've wondered why they seem to care deeply one moment and distant the next, hit like right now. Because what you're witnessing is not their true feelings disappearing. What you're witnessing is their mind winning against their heart, over and over again. They think about reaching out to you maybe 50 times a day, but they pick up their phone and put it down 50 times, because their mind has created a threat scenario. If I reach out, they might reject me. If I show how much I care, they might use it against me. If I let them see how much they matter, I lose power. If I admit I miss them, I admit I need them. If I need them, I'm vulnerable. If I'm vulnerable, I can get hurt. So they stay silent, and the silence becomes a prison they've built themselves. Write in the comments, their mind is their worst enemy. This is acknowledging that their struggle is internal, not about you. Because Carl Jung understood something profound about the human mind. The unconscious creates patterns based on our deepest wounds. And when someone has been hurt before, really hurt, deeply hurt, abandoned, rejected, betrayed, their mind develops a protective mechanism. That mechanism is hypervigilance disguised as wisdom. It's fear disguised as caution. It's pain disguised as strength. And when you come along, When you trigger feelings they thought they'd healed, when you activate emotions they thought were dead, that mechanism goes into overdrive. Their mind literally fights to keep them away from you because it genuinely believes you're a threat. They lie awake at night fighting this war. One side of them wants to confess everything, wants to tell you how much they think about you, wants to admit that your absence makes them ache, wants to finally be honest. But the other side, the side shaped by every disappointment they've ever experienced, keeps them paralyzed, keeps them silent, keeps them running. Maybe they've even tried to leave. Maybe they've told themselves that the healthiest thing is to cut contact completely, to sever this before it destroys them. Maybe they've actually walked away for a while. But even in the distance, even with no communication, even with every intention to forget, they couldn't, because what they feel is stronger than what they fear. But their mind is still fighting it. Type this: their mind is stronger than their heart right now, because that's the battle you're witnessing. That's the inconsistency that confuses you. That's why they can look at you with eyes full of feeling and then turn away like you mean nothing. Here's what's happening in their internal world that you need to understand. Their mind has created a narrative about what vulnerability costs. This narrative was built by experience, by disappointment, by loss. Maybe someone abandoned them and taught them that love leaves. Maybe someone belittled their feelings and taught them that vulnerability is weakness. Maybe someone used their honesty against them and taught them that opening up leads to pain. And now, their mind is using these lessons as evidence. Look what happens when you trust people. Look what happens when you care. Look what happens when you open your heart. Every fear they have about you is actually a fear about themselves, about their ability to survive if you leave, about their capacity to trust again. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." But they haven't renewed their mind yet. They're still operating from the old stories. And those old stories are screaming at them to stay away from you. Comment "mind battle" if you've watched someone fight themselves over loving you. Because what makes this so painful is that you can see the real them sometimes. You can see the version of them that wants connection, that craves closeness, that feels what you feel. You catch glimpses of a person who genuinely cares, and then suddenly the walls come back up and that person disappears. You're left wondering if that tender, vulnerable, real person was ever there at all. But they were, and they still are. They're just being buried by a mind that's terrified of letting them out. Their mind has become their jailer, and they're the prisoner. The psychological reality is this: fear doesn't actually need evidence to convince someone. Fear whispers possibilities, and the mind builds entire cases against the things we love based on possibilities alone. What if you get hurt? What if they leave? What if you open up and they reject you? What if you need them and they're not there? What if you care too much and they don't care enough? These what-ifs become more real to them than the actual moments you've shared. The actual goodness you've shown becomes less believable than the hypothetical betrayal their mind keeps imagining. Because trauma teaches the mind to expect pain, and your mind believes what it's been trained to believe. If this is your first time here, welcome to Angel's Whisper, a sacred space created for divine messages, spiritual insight, and prophetic understanding about the invisible battles people fight within themselves, about the wars happening in minds that have nothing to do with you. This is a place where truth meets the heart, where we explore what's really going on, beneath confusing behavior. I invite you to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay connected, because every message shared here is meant to guide you into understanding that sometimes distance is about their internal struggle, not about your inadequacy. Every single time they fight the urge to reach out, they use emotional energy. Every time they talk themselves into staying away, they burn through willpower they don't have infinite reserves of. Every time they push down what they feel, they add weight to a burden that's getting heavier daily. They're not just living their life, they're using all their strength to resist you, to resist feeling, to resist their own heart. And that kind of sustained effort is unsustainable. That's not something you can do forever. That's not something anyone can do indefinitely. So eventually, one of two things happens. Either their mind breaks through exhaustion and finally lets them reach out, or they reach a breaking point where they have to cut contact completely because the internal war is too painful to continue fighting. They don't necessarily understand this is what's happening. They might think they're protecting themselves. They might think creating distance is the healthy choice. They might even convince themselves they don't care anymore, that the feelings faded, that they've moved on. But the feelings didn't fade. What's exhausted is their ability to keep fighting themselves. This is why silence from them is often loudest right before breakthrough. This is why distance often gets deeper before they return. This is why some people become colder right after being warm. They're not running from you. They're running from the exhaustion of fighting their own mind. Write this: their silence is not forever. Because it's not. It cannot be. The human spirit, when it truly loves, eventually refuses to be silenced forever. The heart, when it's genuinely touched, eventually finds ways to express itself. Not immediately, not on your timeline, but eventually. Type breakthrough if you believe their mind will lose this battle eventually. Here's what you need to understand about why you can't force them to choose you before they're ready. You cannot fight their internal battle for them. You cannot convince their mind that it's safe. You cannot logic them out of fear. You cannot love them out of their trauma responses. What you can do is remain emotionally aligned with your own worth while they figure out their own mind. Because their struggle is not actually about you, it's about them. It's about their history, their wounds, their patterns, their fears. You're just the trigger that's activated all of it. And that's not a reflection of your inadequacy. That's a reflection of how deeply you matter. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." But they're not guarding their heart for their own well-being. They're guarding it against the possibility of being hurt by you. And there's a difference. One is healthy self-protection. The other is self-abandonment disguised as wisdom. So, while they're fighting their own mind, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to live your life. You're supposed to keep growing. You're supposed to keep healing. You're supposed to remember that their internal war is not your responsibility to end. Your only responsibility is to stay true to yourself. Don't diminish yourself, waiting for them to win their internal battle. Don't make yourself smaller, hoping to make it easier for them to let you in. Don't chase them harder, hoping they'll finally surrender to what they feel. Because none of that changes their mind. None of that helps them win their war against themselves. It only teaches them that fighting you is working, that creating distance gets your attention, that staying away keeps you trying. Comment boundaries if you're ready to protect yourself while understanding their internal struggle. The truth is, they need to reach a point where staying away hurts more than opening up. They need to reach a point where their mind finally stops winning. They need to reach a point where the pain of resistance becomes greater than the risk of vulnerability. And that's a journey only they can take. But while they're taking that journey, don't abandon yourself. Don't pretend the connection isn't real. Don't convince yourself you never felt what you felt. Don't let their internal struggle become your external reality. You can acknowledge that they're fighting their own mind while also acknowledging that you deserve someone whose mind isn't constantly at war with their heart. Here's the paradox. The person most likely to reach back out, most likely to finally stop fighting, is the person who realizes they can't reach back out, who understands you're not going to keep waiting forever. Sometimes people need to face the reality of loss, to understand what they're losing. Sometimes they need to experience the possibility of permanent distance, to finally choose to close the distance. It's not manipulation to set boundaries while they figure themselves out. It's not cruel to tell them that you can't keep playing in the space between their fear and their desire. It's wisdom. It's self-respect. It's acknowledging that while they're fighting their own mind, you're a real person with real needs. Type this: I respect their journey, but I honor my needs. This is the balance you need to find. Because you're not the enemy in their internal war. You're actually the invitation to peace. You're the person offering them a chance to stop fighting, to let their guard down, to trust again. But they have to be ready to accept that invitation. And readiness is something you can't force or create or manufacture through patience or understanding. What you can do is remain available without sacrificing yourself. Remain open without losing yourself. Remain hopeful without becoming desperate. And if they eventually win their battle against their own mind, if they finally choose to stop fighting and start trusting, they'll find you there. Or they'll find the door closed, and they'll understand what their fear cost them. Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Fear is not from God, but it controls many people's responses. They're just now learning that lesson. They're fighting to learn that lesson. It might take time. Write in the comments, "I'll honor my worth," while they fight themselves. This is the declaration that brings peace. So tonight, if you're thinking about them, if you're wondering where they are, if you're sensing their internal struggle, know this: they're probably thinking about you too. They're probably fighting their mind right now. They're probably telling themselves reasons why they shouldn't reach out. They're probably lying awake, running through scenarios where they finally tell you everything and scenarios where they disappear forever. And they're exhausted from it, genuinely exhausted. Every moment they spend running from you is a moment they're using precious emotional energy that could be used for healing, for growing, for actually getting healthier. Their mind is keeping them stuck, and that's the real tragedy. But you don't have to be stuck with them. You don't have to fight your own mind the way they're fighting theirs. You can choose clarity. You can choose self-respect. You can choose to stop waiting for them to win a battle they might not win for years or months or ever. If this message reached you at the exact right moment, if something deep inside you recognized the truth of this, then you're ready for what comes next. You're ready to stop accepting half-truths from someone who's at war with themselves. You're ready to believe that real love eventually finds courage. You're ready to understand that their struggle is not your burden to carry. Type ready if you're prepared to live your life fully while they figure out their mind. Like this video if someone's mind has been keeping them from you. because you deserve someone whose heart isn't constantly fighting against itself. You deserve someone whose mind is healed enough to trust what they feel. You deserve someone who chooses you, not because you finally wore them down, but because they finally won their internal battle. Subscribe to Angel's Whisper for more truth about invisible struggles, about what's really happening beneath confusing behavior, about the wars people fight that have nothing to do with you, but everything to do with them. And remember this, their mind fighting them is not evidence that they don't love you. It's evidence that they do. It's evidence that you matter so much that fear got activated. It's evidence that loving you threatens everything they've built to protect themselves from pain. But eventually, the heart wins. Eventually, the mind gets tired. Eventually, they'll stop fighting themselves. The only question is whether you'll still be standing there when they finally surrender. The only question is whether you will still be available. And that's a question only you can answer. Not for them, for yourself. Until we meet again, may you honor your worth, may you trust your intuition, and may you know that someone's internal battle is their responsibility to win, not yours to fight for them.